Welcome to our new podcast. Living Matters is a heartfelt podcast series that delves into the profound experiences of living with an incurable illness. Co-hosted by me, Sarah, the founder of Sarah's Star.
And myself, Nicky, founder of My Zen Days. The series opens up conversations about life, death, and everything in between. Through candid discussions, the podcast seeks to provide comfort, insight, and inspiration to listeners going through similar journeys, as well as to those supporting someone that they love who's facing incurable illness.
Welcome to episode 1. We're going to talk about death, the elephant in the room. Most people avoid talking about death, and yet it's the one thing we all have in common.
Sarah.
Nicky.
Can we go back to, well, just introduce ourselves as well. So we've been friends for about 5 years now.
Yes, we have.
And it's been an absolute pleasure knowing you and loving you over the course of the last 5 years. But I remember being quite surprised when you first started talking about this thing called death cafes that you wanted to do. So can you take us back to where that came from? What made you want to start doing the death cafes?
So I'd heard about death cafes and I was quite interested anyway, because I'm quite an inquisitive person. But I had breast cancer when I was 35 and went straight back into life after that. I was like, I'm going to live every minute to the max. And I got about a year to a year and a half and I was re-diagnosed. And this time it was on my bones and my liver. So it was incurable. And I deteriorated really quite quickly. So I started thinking about what was going to be helpful for me. And I knew I wanted to talk about death and dying as in my own death and the process of me dying. And rather than just sit all my family in a room, I thought, I know, I'll get a room hired and invite loads of strangers and force my family to come into a room where they openly have to talk about death and dying.
So that sounds like true Sarah style.
It is. But in reality, my background is Catholic Irish, and we do death, within 3 days. Then a wake, a party, it's not always a party, but we really try and do closure over them 3 days. And I went to my first funeral when I was 7, and it was an open casket. Seen my first dead body when I was 7. So all them things were very normal to me. And then I moved to England at the age of 19. And as I got older, and people had passed at work or friends, relatives had passed, and I really started to see how different it is in England than it is in Ireland. And so I wanted a mixture of both. But I wanted solely to be able to talk about it openly. And it's been a real gift that I can talk to my friends and family openly about it. But the Death Cafe has helped that so much. I mean, you've spoke at one of the Death Cafes and attended several. So what's your thoughts?
So it's interesting that you were talking about kind of your upbringing in Ireland, and there seems to be more of a conversation, I think, around death. So I was obviously brought up and I've lived most of my life in England, and it really is the elephant in the room. It's this thing that no one seems to want to talk about. I mean, certainly in my family, we never spoke about it. I remember, when I was 16, my granddad, Paddy, he was Irish.
Lovely.
So granddad Paddy died and my mum was so devastated and she wouldn't talk about it. She just wouldn't talk about it because it was so painful for her. And that was a lot of kind of the experience that I had. And it seemed to be similar to the experiences of most of my friends and, and the rest of the families that I knew, where people just didn't talk about death. And it's really unhelpful because actually later on, sort of in 2013, I lost my brother in a tragic accident. And suddenly you're faced with this situation where someone has died and you have never talked about the prospect of them dying. You've told yourself for all of this time that you wouldn't be able to handle it if someone in your family was to die. And so the point is that it's so unhelpful, the fact that we don't talk about it. And so it feels very strange to start putting it on the table, and especially with the Death Cafe.
Yeah. And, like, if I can just go back, Simon was only young when he died. So everyone has this feeling of being invincible when they're young. And Simon was an adventurer. So you were never going to see that coming, were you? And it's that real shock to the system. And that's why I would like to even take death cafes into schools, because I think kids are amazing when it comes to this, because they just say everything out. You know, with my own two children, we've had to have some brutal conversations, be really honest about things, and 1 minute you're in there in the depths of despair, and literally 5 minutes later, it's what's for tea? And that to me is so refreshing. I think this is where we all need to be at. 1 minute, yeah, we're talking about the nitty gritty of this. But the next minute, do you know what? These little people still need fed.
To answer your question, so in terms of the death cafes, having been there, I think I think they're wonderful, and I think that it's probably, for a lot of people who haven't heard about them,
Yeah.
it sounds like quite a daunting prospect. So are you just going to sit around tables and all cry and be morbid and talk about death and things like that? But the experience and the reality of it is something really different. Like people are howling, laughing, having some of these conversations, and having really deep, that it gives them opportunity to think deeply about what is most important for them in their life, and what's most important to them now to get organised, so that they're not leaving the people that they love with headaches and difficult decisions to make. And so to have, I love the cards that you've got, the Death Cafe cards, where everybody, you're kind of breaking up into these small groups and having specific conversations on specific questions about, for example, like, what kind of funeral would you like? And people are thinking and talking out loud, and sometimes they don't even know. But the realization that if they don't know, oh my goodness, how stressful would that have been to leave that to the family to start making decisions,
Because a lot of people's response is, well, I'm not going to be here. So
yes.
you crack on. But what I love about the questions is, we've been doing these now for, God, I think it's nearly 3 years. But I've only recently realised, if you ask people a question, they really try to answer. And I think that's why we're onto something with the cards. And so, for anyone who doesn't know, we use a set of cards where we've come up with questions. They fall under different categories. And sometimes they're really like, what do you think of a roadside shrine? They range from that to, if this was your last day on earth, how would you spend it? And I think it's just an eye-opener. And we've tried to create an atmosphere that's really not morbid. And you get your real storytellers in. And no matter what, how awful it's been, an experience of death, you always find a really funny story or something that happened that you end up really laughing at. And if you don't start talking and thinking about this, you're never going to find them little moments of joy.
So what's been some of the conversations that have stuck most with you from the death cafes?
I loved the first ever death cafe because we mix people around. So you don't tend to be with a person that you've come along with. And we've done that on purpose because we found out that people open up more, or they want to talk more if they're not with a person that they know so well. But the guy on my table, the question was, what music or hymns might you want at your funeral? And just like that, he went, well, I don't care because I'll be dead. And I'd never had such a direct, finished, final.
Yeah.
And it really made me laugh. But I think because in Ireland, music is a huge part of your, like when my dad was dying, he picked his own hymns, or at least tried to. Because my mum was like, oh, Joe, I don't like that one. And my sister went, Mum, can he not even have what he wants when he's dying or when he's dead? You know, and we got so much mileage out of this. Remember when Mummy wouldn't even let Daddy the ham he wanted when he was like on death's door? And we get a lot from using the humour of things, you know, things like that. But other parts of the Death Cafe that I've really loved is when I've found out something new. Like I found out that you can have a version of a burying Viking, like a Viking burial at Teignmouth, because it's similar to like a fisherman's burial. And they're one of the only places that still do this. And I wouldn't have found this out unless my brother came to one of them and he said, well, if I could have anything I want a Viking burial. And me and my sister were just like, how did we never know this? Mm-hmm. But why would you? Because no one's ever asked that direct question, really. So what was funny about that was I went on a podcast with you, actually, and we talked about this. And I said to my brother afterwards, just to let you know, I've done this podcast and, you know, I've mentioned that you want a Viking burial. And I've also found out that if that's something you really want, we'll take you to Teignmouth. I don't think we can fire any flaming arrows, but we'll do the best that we can. And he replied, did I say that? I was like, and that's true, Brian.
Yes. Yes, Brian, you signed up for that.
Well, whatever is happening now, that's what you're getting.
That's wonderful. And actually, my dad's obsessed with Vikings, so I need to tell him about this Viking burial
You
opportunity at Teignmouth. One of the conversations I remember having at one of the death cafes, it was a lady who she spoke about the fact that the death cafes had inspired her to really start asking herself some questions about, like, what do I want for my funeral? And the way she spoke about it, she said, I could leave it to my daughters, and I know most people would just kind of leave it to be sorted out after they've passed away. But she said, I love my daughters more than anything, and they're so busy, and I don't want to give them another job to do. And she said, so I actually quite enjoyed thinking through, like, what are the different parts, what are the readings that I want, what are the hymns that I want, and what's the different music and things like that. And she did it. And she said, I've made the whole plan, and I've printed it out, and I've put it in a plastic folder, and it's in a particular drawer, and my daughters know that it's there now. And she said, I actually loved being inspired to do it because it felt good to do it. These are all of the things that are meaningful for me. And most importantly, I loved the fact that I knew I was saving a headache.
Yeah, and I love that because I love that kind of thing. But the reason that's important to me is because you can have whatever you want. So I was the one that decided I want to talk about my death. So why would I not then put down on paper what I would like to have? Mm-hmm. And I think as well, it's almost a nice goodbye, you know, going out the way that you've decided you want to go. And there's so much power in being honest, because all you have to do is say, this is what I want when I'm gone. And then everyone's going to do it. No fighting, no arguing, just making that person happy and enjoying that last part of them that they've left for you, really.
Mm. So who would you say, who are the death cafes really for?
I love that question because I would have thought death cafes were for people who were dying, but they're for everybody. Like, I don't think there's anyone who wouldn't benefit from going to a death cafe. And like, we've looked at some of the questions with the kids, and they are so, there's no filter. So they'll just say things out. And they'll really get excited about things like if you wanted everyone to wear a certain colour to the wedding, they're like, the funeral.
What exactly?
You know, a wedding and a funeral if you want. Double whammy. Whatever floats your boat, Nicky. Put that back to you.
But do children come?
No, but I want to go into schools and do them.
And so do you imagine you do like a separate thing? I'm just thinking for anybody who's listening to this and thinking, I don't really know much about death cafes, but actually I can see the value in starting to have some of these conversations, even if they're not ill,
Yeah.
but they just want to start kind of opening up
Oh,
the
totally.
perspective.
And that's why it's open to everyone. Because even though it's run through the charity, I just feel so passionate about death cafes because this is something that everyone needs to talk about. And there is that thing of, this sounds terrible, but it really made me laugh. It's that death has a 100% success rate. So just because you've decided to hide from it doesn't mean it's going away. And the sooner you get on board and think, God, if it opens your mind. I think that's what I love. Having these conversations opens your mind. You become really inquisitive about it rather than being like, if I stay still, they'll stop talking to me.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that it does, by nature of having the conversation about death, really sharpens the focus on how you live.
Yes.
On how you, and so are you prioritizing the right things in your life? Are you spending your time with the people who are the most important to you? Do you love how your days feel, or actually do you want to start making some shifts? Because I think having the acceptance that death is there, like you say, it's going to win in the end for everybody. It's just a matter of when, and no one knows when it's going to be. But actually, to accept that is a fact, and that's what lies ahead, can help you to reconsider what's most important to you now.
Yeah. And I think it really puts so much into perspective. Plus, even like you said about that lady, going home and thinking, I'm going to put a playlist together. I love music, so I'm going to get really passionate about that. It becomes a really nice project instead of a really morbid one. And I just think it's a gift, really, to actually open your eyes, accept this is going to happen, but take that little bit of control, as in, do you know what, this is going to happen, but I'm going to have a wee bit of control on the matter.
Mm-hmm. So if there's someone listening now who's thinking, right, I'm interested and I want to go, but I don't like attending events on my own, what if no one talks to me when I get there? What would you say? Because I've seen what the welcomes are like, but how would you describe it?
So the minute you come in the door, there's a warm welcome, and there's always the most delicious cakes.
Yeah.
And a little drink. And you can come on your own because it's so, I don't know, the atmosphere is just charged. It's so lovely. But we always have a speaker. We'll always have someone who does a little introduction as to why we're doing it. And then we'll have someone who comes and talks about a certain topic. And that as well, it's more that you're coming to listen to someone speak. So many people will go and do that on their own. And then we'll divide you into different parts of the room. So again, you're always going to be with someone and everyone's always going to be chatting because there's questions as well. So yeah, I think if anything, it'll give you a new lease of life, and you'll leave with a real sense of purpose and new ideas rather than worrying about what if I cry or what if I get really upset. And we always say, if you do, grab one of the facilitators, go outside, have a breath. There's always going to be someone there who can help. I just think they're really beautiful. And until you try it, you're not really going to know for yourself.
I remember, the first one I came to, and I was a bit nervous because I was thinking, oh, am I going to feel heavy and like sad and things like that afterwards? But it was really the opposite.
Yeah, it's uplifting.
It's uplifting, but it just felt really warm. And actually, what I would say as well, for anyone who's thinking about coming, is it's really well structured and it's really well facilitated and contained. So there isn't big emotions that, I haven't seen anybody have, big outbursts. There's nothing like that. It's a safe environment, and it feels very grounding.
Yeah, it
And
does.
it feel you have a chance to connect with people about some topics that are really important. And everyone's very respectful of everyone else's contribution and stuff. So people are wanting to give you space if you want to talk, but you don't have to make a contribution necessarily if you'd prefer to just sit and observe.
Yeah. And I think that's quite important because sometimes there's a lot of big characters in the room and not everyone's like that, but everyone is respectful. Because what they'll always say is, if you don't want to speak at the table, just say, and you don't have to. But again, I'll go back to, if you ask people a question, they can't help themselves. So I have brought some of our Death Cafe cards along. I'm going to get you to pick one, and then we can have a little discussion, and that'll help people to realise what it's all about.
Okay, perfect. So anyone? Yeah. Oh, okay. This will be short. What do you know about natural or woodland burial sites?
Ooh. I know there's one in Morpeth. I know it's something I'm really interested in.
Why?
I just think I like the forest, I like the trees. It feels more natural.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I feel quite drawn to it. It just, in my head, as mad as it sounds, I know funerals are meant to be sad, but I have this vision of skipping along into the woods.
Other people skipping along.
Well, not really, but but I'm going to visit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's
But so
not we're going to the graveyard.
What does it mean then? Does that mean that there's certain locations that you can be buried, not a graveyard?
Yeah, so there's certain places that you can go and have a woodland burial.
Amazing. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, I'm going to get you to pick cards. There we go.
If you knew you were dying, what would you change about your life?
Oh, wow. You see, this is precisely the perspective sharpening that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
So if I knew I was dying, what would I change about my life? I think I prioritise work because I love working hard and I love achieving and doing, and actually I love the work that I do. But like with anything else, something that you love, if you kind of overindulge it can become a bit of a double-edged sword. So I think I probably would address the balance a bit more, spend more time with friends for sure, and probably stop stressing about certain things, which is obviously ironic since I'm the founder of Buy Zen Days, which is all around stress management. But I mean, that's why I'd sort of started in the first place as well, was just to raise awareness around, like, well, your mental health and how you can manage it and how you can manage your mindset so you can enjoy your life more. So I would say that I would readdress the work slash life, that balance, and make sure that the people who are the most important people that I know, I mean, I could give you a list of who they are, that they're the ones who get the best of me and the best of my attention, the best of my time.
Well, that was a fabulous answer. And what I love about your answer is I think that I am the way I am today because of you, because I did a lot of work with you, worked through a lot of things, really, really thought about what I wanted. But it took to have incurable cancer for me to get to the place I really wanted to be in life. And weirdly, I see it as a gift because had I not got this, I don't think I ever would have changed. I think I would have just stayed on the rat race, stayed in the hamster wheel, striving bigger, better. I want this, I want that. And now I'm like, I think I've already made almost all of the changes that I wanted to make. Like, all the people I care about and love know that I love and care about them. And that's number one for me. So important. But a little twist to that question is when you decide this is what I'm changing and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to spend time with all these people, they're not always ready.
And have you had that experience?
Well, I'm mostly thinking about me kids, because obviously you're like, oh, time's limited, like, or, and that might just be what you think on one day. But they're nearly teenagers. Like, they don't want to be hanging around with their parents. Not really. And I think I love them to death. But for me, them having a normal life and doing normal things is so much more important than making sure that we do all these things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that too with family and friends, just because I got sick and things went the way they went, my brother and sister still had jobs. My mum was in Ireland, and there's a lot of not putting pressure on other people because you've now got this agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually worked in my favour because of that. I think I've spent more time with myself than I ever would have, and I actually quite like it.
Well, and you channeled so much of your energy and time into Sarah's Star.
And that's been a godsend for me. And it's so funny because I took ill health retirement from work and thought, that's it, I'm done. And then was like, oh my God, I'm 39. Like, I can't be finished.
Mm-hmm.
And it all just developed. And it was so lovely. And I'm so passionate about it for me and for other people who are in a similar situation, but also for their family, because, like we all know, it isn't just me that's living with cancer. It's all my friends and family. And I see how differently that affects everyone. And it was a privilege for me to be there when my dad died. And I think that is the biggest lesson I've learned in life. He showed me what it was like to die with dignity and what it was like to be in a room full of love. And he went so peacefully, surrounded by love. And when it comes down to it, what else matters than that?
So I know you mentioned when we've talked a little bit about Sarah's Star, but can I ask you a question I have been dying to ask you for years? And which is, so I'll tell you, I'll try and put myself in your position, right? Let's just imagine you've just got this diagnosis and it feels obviously really sad, really big, really heavy, really worrying. And there's obviously the physical illness and everything that comes with all of that. Where on earth did you get the energy and the inspiration and the idea and the motivation to go and set up a brand new charity?
It's people inspired, really. But like I said, I spent a lot of time on my own, in my own head, being really ill. And I always had this sense of, you're not finished yet. There's more to do. And I hated feeling like I had no use, no sense of purpose. And it really quickly made me recognize, if I feel this, there must be so many other people that feel this. Because whoever wants to be told, you can't work anymore, you're too sick, And I always felt like it's a feeling of being put out to pasture, where people don't even say what you've got anymore or your name. It's this like, did you hear about? It's like whispered, which is very easily done in this voice. So it all started as an idea, and then I talked to my palliative care nurse, Peter, about it. And me and him did a little bit of brainstorming, and he's seeing people in palliative care every day. And he was like, It's so needed. And I kind of just, from then, I think even having that sense of purpose is what helped me to get better. And I started to improve. They got my medication under control, so that pain management took 7 months in total. And I'm such an independent person and a real social butterfly. So it's really hard to be stuck at home and have other people look after me. And I just thought the identification side of things, because when I first started talking about it, I said, even if we just signpost people to the right places, because I've learned so much from having this illness. I've got all this information. If I can share that. But then it just took off. But that was from the help of friends and family, and real dedication from people who were looking after me and wanted my best interests and they could see the vision and wanted to create my vision for me. So it was all hands on deck. I mean, people painting, people shouting out for any secondhand things. And we got computers, desks, we got a sofa, we got a TV. Honestly, the room looks fantastic. And what I love about it is there's a wee bit of everything and everybody in there. And it was always just going to be, it's like a living room. So it was a space for you to come, no matter how unwell you were. It was for a sense of achievement that you've left the house. Because that's what I loved. It was on the worst days when you managed to have a shower. And you're like, oh, that was my biggest achievement that day. And that's okay. And I needed somebody to say, it's all right if that's your biggest achievement, because I always try and move mountains and run before I can walk. And I have to learn the hard way.
Mm-hmm. So, and I guess it's important to point out then that because the conversation that we've had is about death cafes and Sarah's Star. The death cafes is one part of what Sarah's Star does. So what else does Sarah's Star do? What other support do you offer for people?
So we offer gentle exercises for anyone with an incurable illness, but their family and friends are also welcome to come, and we support the NHS. So it's quite broad. But I think that's really important. There's a lot of people that need support around illness. So we'll do craft sessions, and they range from, the last one we did was jewellery making, to making cards, to, oh my God, there's so many things that we've done, honestly. We've got Pilates, we've got armchair warriors, we've done mindfulness sessions with you.
Indeed we have, yeah.
And they've been amazing. We do yoga, which is more of restorative yoga. So it's all about the relaxation side of it. We send people off to Sammy Ann's for the holistic therapies, and everyone there is trained up in oncology, massages as well. We do drumming. So everything revolves around what you still can do.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on, oh, do you know what, this has happened to me, I can't do anything anymore. We tried to flip it on its head, and we're like, let's think about what you can do. And everything is come. And even if you can't do it, sit in the room, because the crack is always so good. We were running
it is
hula hoop classes for a while, and there was hula hoops flying everywhere. And I'd said to one of the girls, she was like, I can't do that. I wouldn't be allowed. And I said, come and sit in the room, because sometimes someone gets hit in the face by. It's really funny. And then I was like, a terrible person. I mean, to be fair, it was me that nearly ended up with a black eye, so it's okay.
But there seems to be so many different opportunities and classes, and whether, like you say, whether it's the light exercise, and it's so accessible, So it really doesn't matter, you know. I know there's people who are in wheelchairs who come along and they'll take part and do the bits that they can do, and then other people who are like really able-bodied, and it's everything in between. And I love that. I love that you've really focused on making it as friendly and open and accessible for the most amount of people possible.
I think that's really important, because inclusivity is exactly what you need when it comes to this. And I've always said there's this known look between people who have got going on what I've got going on, and being able to go in and not have to sit and explain what's wrong with you, but just go in and crack on with whatever's happening. You know, we provide Reiki for people on a Friday, but we also have a book club once a month, and book club is one of the funniest things. Honestly, the worse the book, the funnier the session is. Like, and then you actually start thinking, did I like that book now? Because I've laughed so much. And it always comes back to the flipping things on their head. My husband runs a tabletop gaming club on a Thursday. I think it's like 2 Thursdays in a month. And that's really good for him as well. And generally, and my mother-in-law runs the Knit and Natter group. So what I did as well, sneakily, was I give people in my family jobs. Like, come to the charity, facilitate this. Because I also, you know, behind that, there is always this is a good way for them to cope, you know, if and when the time comes. And that's just a nicer way to look at it, really.
And it gives people the opportunity to meaningfully help you to bring your vision to life with the charity.
Oh, 100%.
And to get and to like sort of become part of the community that you've built.
Yeah. And it's so friendly. Like, you can't come to a class and not laugh. You know, there's always, like, even in Pilates, and I'm looking around, and the age group ranges from sometimes late 20s right up to 80s. And Steph will always say about your coordination, and so she'll do where you have to throw the very soft Pilates ball to each other. But everyone turns into like you're being back at school. It's all little giggles and people getting hit in the head, or, you know. So then she's changed it that you have to shout someone's name before you throw it, just in case.
As a heads up. And I have to say, I mean, I think every single time that I've come along at the Linskill Centre to come and visit you or to be part of like whatever the activities are, you can hear the laughter as you're walking down the corridor. And it's a long corridor with a turn in it, but you can hear the laughter coming out of the room, which I think is it's testament to the type of friendly and supportive, safe community that you've built there. So for people who are listening to this and thinking, oh, so she's mentioned about Reiki, she's mentioned about Pilates, there's, you know, sound baths, there's all these different things. How would they find out what you've got going on and when it is and how they can come and get signed up?
Everything's on all of our socials. But if you go on to the website and it's just sarahs-star.org, then you'll find absolutely loads of information. And, you know, it's worth saying that even though we're talking about all the joyous things, there's always moments when you need to be real. And there is such a huge space for that as well. You know, and we like to provide the opportunity for people to do some journaling, and we've done that together. And through the mindful meditation course that you run, people have got a lot out of being able to even get it down on paper if they can't say it out loud. And we have all them tools at Sarah Star to help people at whatever stage that they're in, really.
And the brilliant thing about the mindfulness program as well is that it's all available online.
Yeah.
So if there are people who are interested in that kind of thing and about kind of, you know, learning a bit about meditation and mindfulness and emotional regulation and stress management and things like that, but you don't necessarily want to, or maybe you feel like you can't come into
Yes.
Sarah's Star, then still get in touch and we can send you the online.
Oh, that's it. And as well, we have little packs of like making things if you want to be creative and it's something you want to do at home. Because I really want to help people in Northern Ireland because that's where I'm from. And I did the two death cafes there in November and they went down so well. And like I said, it's very different in Ireland. You know, the 3-day turnaround, the wake, then the funeral. And I did wonder how it would come across differently.
Mm-hmm.
But the response was just unreal. And no one wanted to stop talking. That's what I love about the death cafes. There's never enough time. And the laughter in the room is just so perfect.
It does fly by.
Yeah, it does.
It does
We're
fly
usually chased out.
True. Thank you so much for sharing so much information on the death cafes and who they are, who they're for, and what it feels like. So I really encourage anybody who's thinking about joining, just come along. You've got nothing to lose. It's a safe space. You can be part of a really amazing community. So before we wrap this up, I have got one final question for you. If there was one thought, okay, one message that you have for people about either living or dying, that you would want people to come away having listened to this episode, what's the one message you would love people to take away with them?
If you talk about your own death and your funeral, you can take some control back, bring the power back to you, where you make the decision on how all of that's going to go. And for me, that makes it a little bit more manageable. I want to say thank you so much for doing this with me. I absolutely love our first podcast.
Me too. Me too. It's wonderful. And I'm looking forward to all the conversations that we're going to have, because death and dying and living and prioritizing the things that are most important to you, I think it's going to be a real cornerstone, actually, of all the conversations that we have in this series.
I agree. And I also think we should play a game of what's Sarah going to sound like every week.
No, well, you've done enough talking for today, so thank you so much. And you can now go and rest your vocal cords.
Thanks, Nicky.
So we'll see you for the next one. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I left my glasses in the car. That's what my pauses were. I was like, what does that say?
Did we get them?
Sorry. She's an idiot.